when they would have the festas, the Lygon Street Festa, Chapel Street Festa, we would go with our little bum bags and we would have like 10 grand cash in our bum bags and we would be like...
Hello and welcome to an episode of Meijor League, the podcast for aspiring entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Don Meij, and our guests today are Natalia and Daniella, the co-founders of Verge Girl, or VRG GRL, founded in 2007, and is the Australian fashion brand that specialises in stylish, high-quality wear designed for women. Natalia and Daniella were kind enough to join me at my home to record this episode. So take us right back to the beginning of your journey. When did it start? Go back as far as you want. Was it a dream from a young child or?
I don't think it was a dream. Like, it wasn't particularly a dream of ours. We just, our parents, we grew up in Melbourne and our parents were in menswear. They like manufactured and my dad.
Retail stores.
Yeah. And our dad was like a tailor. Both our parents are very creative people.
Is it a brand we know today from Melbourne?
No, they sold the business before they moved, before we all moved to Brisbane.
If you're a Melbourneite, potentially you would know it. But so, yeah, we like grew up. Our childhood was like after school we'd go and our mum would pick us up. We'd be like hanging out in the back room practicing like on commercial sewing machines with like scrap fabrics. That was like our childhood pretty much. And yeah, we moved to Brisbane and I left school. I was only in school for like a year and I left school when I was 17. When I was 16 and we started Verge Girl when I was 17.
So we were both. I finished school, and that was when she left school. She was studying at college, fashion design, and I left school.
Like
I finished school, and then I started studying fashion design as well. And we wanted to be designers. That was what we were going to do. We were going to start our own label, and in those days, that was like probably something a lot of people wanted to do, even now. But that was the goal.
It was kind of like a far-fetched dream, though. But like anyone who wants to be sort of in fashion, which was all that we knew, we were like, we have to study and have some sort of like, you know, understanding and background. So,
and then we had an opportunity to take over a retail space in Brisbane City.
Right in the CBD.
It was, it was in Elizabeth Arcade, which was like I feel like it was like the cool spot in Brisbane. It was like just tiny little boutiques. And if you wanted something like kind of cool and different, you would go there. And we found this like tiny little shop.
It was like 30 or 40 square meter store.
And yeah, we borrowed like $30,000 off our parents. And
we basically bought stock and opened.
And did you buy stock from somewhere else that you designed or did you manufacture it yourself?
All different brands we bought from wholesalers.
We bought like sort of like wholesale, you know, what I don't even know how you describe it now, but it was like wholesale sort of like stock that you would go pick.
Yep.
And then, you know, take it back with you. Then we had like vintage stuff. We had young designers. And then we also had started like a brand that was not called Verge Girl. It was called
Aurelia.
Called Augustus or something. And
Is that from Gladiator or something?
I have no idea where it came from. Anyway, but we would like tie-dye like silk. Tons of yards of silk. We would tie-dye it and then make like, which was really cool at the time, we would make like kimonos and like, you'd call them dusters, but they were just like long silk things that like touch the ground. Anyway, we sold those as well. And pretty much like
it was like from the day we opened, we were busy.
We
had lines of people outside around the corner and it was like
every Friday night was just like hectic. Like the arcade would like be like just chock-a-block of
people. And who could hear about? How did they hear about you? Or they just found you?
They just found us.
There was nothing like what we did. Like,
yeah, it was like at that time there was like, don't want to offend anyone here, but there was like Supre was like the cheap, like, you know, $10 a piece clothing. Or there was like kind of brands that were maybe $400 or $500 a piece Manning
even
Cartel or
300, like Zimmerman was kind of around that.
300-400 at that time. But like for
There was
people at
nothing in
17 and
between.
19, for girls our age, you couldn't afford that. But you didn't really want the cheap, but you couldn't afford the $300 or $400 outfit every week. And so we kind of put our price point at, it was like $50 to $70 a piece.
We pretty much picked and, we bought, made, found stuff that we wanted to wear.
Did your parents give you an idea of what the cost should be to what you sell it for? Like, how did you know what to...
Yeah, I think our dad did. Our dad sort of helped us with that stuff. But I think because we were around that our whole lives, we sort of just knew. We knew what the markup was supposed to be.
Right.
We knew.
Like, for context, when we were like 7 and 8, we would...
it wasn't slave labor. It was like a choice.
It was like fun. But we would like work at, like, our dad had a store in Chapel Street, a store in Lygon Street. And when they would have the festas, the Lygon Street Festa, Chapel Street Festa, we would go with our little bum bags and we would have like 10 grand cash in our bum bags. And we would be like, making sales, and
like we were young,
and
but
our dad would pay us for it. Like he'd give us, $1,000 back when we were little to go shopping on the weekend. And so it was just kind of natural to us to like, it was kind of just
we
easy.
knew
It all came instinctually.
Yeah, it wasn't
Sort of,
something that we had to, it was just
But even knowing the rent, like when you entrepreneurs start out, knowing the cost of the rent, your utility costs.
But I don't know. It was
we
just knew. We just knew. Yeah, what?
Because CBD rents are expensive too.
Yeah,
I know it was only 30 square meters, but
I think because it was expensive, but I think because it was small, and we at the start, like we were working 7 days a week, like we were working, and then we gradually started hiring staff, casuals, and then part timers, and
we didn't do anything with staff until we were like comfortable that we could
until
afford
a few
to
months,
do that.
of trading, and then within, I don't know, a couple of maybe a month or two of trading, we'd paid our parents back, and then we were making money and we were making profit. So we were kind of like, the way it was working was just working.
And how are you splitting your time between buying the stuff and then selling
We'd
the stuff?
literally go like early in the morning, like the wholesales would open early at like 7, 8
Here
o'clock.
in Brisbane?
Yeah.
All right.
So we would go every few weeks to Sydney. One of us would go and buy stock and
then
get
we
it
would
sent.
we would do a lot of buying like via email. Like, so we would have, we would
They'd
find
send you
young
photos
designers and then like choose stuff, and we would sell like stuff like hotcakes. And then vintage stuff, we both have always loved vintage shopping. So any and every opportunity we had, we would either split up, or when we had, staff, we would go together vintage hunting. And if like our parents would like take us, because we would come back with like, big loads of like stock.
And was there any period in that first year where it was a disaster? Like you bought a bunch of stuff and it just didn't sell, or?
Not really.
Wow.
No.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it was like,
wow,
I don't know,
congratulations.
it was really good luck. But
I think that because we were selling, like I was 17, she was 18 or 19, we were buying what we wanted and we were selling to our own like age group. We were buying for the, like, we knew who we were buying for.
You had good empathy.
And so it just was easy, and we sort of became like, we had a bit of a cult following.
And then we started like our
then.
Facebook page, and then after we did that for a few years. We opened a second store in West End, and then that was when online and sort of like Instagram and stuff had just started after a few years, and then we started our online store, which at the start was like a struggle because we were used to retail, face-to-face retail.
We started our online store though, like just before we found our West End store. And when we first started our online store, we were doing it, we both lived at home, and we were doing it from
our garage,
like our parents' basement. And we would get up, go and buy stock in the morning, work all day, and on Fridays was till like 9, and then we'd finish at like 10, and then we would come home every afternoon, every night, and pack orders, like, do all the inventory, do everything. And then we literally,
I don't know how we have the energy these days. I don't think I'd be able to do that.
It's the epitome of hustling. But like we actually, sometimes I feel like people don't like think along those lines of not all entrepreneurs start a business like with their own two hands, but I feel like lots of businesses you have to put in that hard
hard yards, especially at the start.
But for us it was fun because like it was just like
we loved what we were doing,
and we still do.
And so the second store, you got an online, so you got these 3
and
sale points.
So then we were kind of splitting our time. We hired a few girls, and then our online kind of at the start, I think because our stores were turning over good money, we were kind of like, we didn't really know at the time I guess we didn't know how big online could get. And so we were kind of just buying a little bit of stock for online and doing a little bit here and there, and we were selling stuff because it was sort of,
there was nothing to like base it on really. We just were like kind of just taking chances.
And so we didn't really, I don't think, put as much effort as what needed to. Physically we put the effort in, but I don't think we were taking the right steps to build up the online because we're thinking like we're doing really good turnover in our stores. And that's what we know. Online was like a whole nother world.
Focus off that to do online, but and it was like hard work. And then one day, like we were
doing our own photo shoots, and we were just doing everything. And then one day we said to our mum, we were like, our parents, we said like, we need to I think we're going to close down the online store. Like this is just too hard for what we're making online and how much effort we're putting in. It's not adding up. And our mum and dad said, why don't you just give it 6 months? Like put all you've got into it for 6 months. And we used to take, we still do, but our parents, we take a lot of advice from our parents because we respect them. And, our parents were in business for so many years in a successful business. So we'd always take advice. If we couldn't work it out ourselves, we'd ask one of them. And so our parents, especially our mum, was like, just give it 6 months, put everything you've got into it for 6 months, invest a bit of money into it. If it doesn't work, close it down. And you're like, okay.
But she actually also said, she's like, I had a dream, and the dream is that like you had this online store and it was just like, it was like a physical store, but the walls just kept on expanding. And she's like, it was like limitless opportunity. And she's like, I just feel you need to do it for 6 months, put 100% effort into it. And that's literally what made us like,
okay, and then once we like hired a photographer and we started hiring models, doing photo shoots every week, putting proper like decent amount of stock. We were like, okay, if it doesn't sell, we'll just reduce it. Like,
and still not your own brand yet?
No, okay. This was still us buying other brands. And then it just started taking off. And so we were like, oh. So then it started making the same as what our stores were making, then making more than what our stores were making. And then
we would take content, like we would do our own shoots and we would take our content, and then we would also take content like in the stores on ourselves or on like, customers and like stuff that was going on in the store and people that were, it was kind of like a really buzzy vibe, and we would take photos of that and then put it on Instagram. And our Instagram was just we didn't do any advertising, didn't even know anything about advertising.
No.
But we were just like organically growing and growing. And
were the young girls that were finding your business in the stores just going straight to online once they found your online because it was easier? Or was it a totally new audience?
I think it was a new audience.
Yeah, because I feel like people would see us on social media and be like, how do I buy this? And if they were in Brisbane, I think often they were coming into the stores, but out of Brisbane. And then we started getting like a few overseas sales, and they were then going on our online because they'd probably find it on social media or whatever. And then it just started organically growing. And then after a few years, we had our stores for, I think it was maybe total 10 years, something like that.
Well, we had the city store for 10 years and then they the landlord had told us that the building was sold and they were going to like knock it down, and we were like pretty like sad because it was very like nostalgic. But
we moved into another store in the city and we still had West End, and then our online started growing so dramatically that we were like, okay, now it's like the opposite. Now we're like, compared to what we're making online, and the amount of effort we were putting into our stores, because by that point we were working in our stores a couple of days a week, but we had mostly staff, and that was like a lot to deal with us not being there when we were so used to being there all the time. But we were like physically with, you know, how busy online is, that's what our focus needs to be mostly on. We decided to close the stores.
In that time we had just bought our first building, which was also in Bowen Hills, and that's where we had set up like our
warehouse and office.
Warehouse office, and yeah, within like a few years of being there and online growing, and then we decided that we'd close the stores and just focus online. It was really when retail was pretty like not cool anymore.
Yeah. So, well, in Brisbane, I feel like a lot of stores, a lot of boutiques had closed. We were one of the last boutiques in Brisbane at the time. There was literally, I feel like now there's probably a lot more boutiques and kind of, I guess, individual stores opening.
A revival coming on.
Yeah, but at that time it was like,
it was literally us. We were on Adelaide Street. It was like us and then like H&M and
it was
across
all
the
chain
road
stores.
And,
Like
it was just
high street stores and chain stores. That's all there was.
And when you go back to the office, did you have other buyers now so that you could take a step back a little bit?
Yeah,
or
we did. I still was very involved in buying, and we had started doing a little bit of our own brand.
About 20% of our own brand.
Yeah, it wasn't huge. It was only like 20%, but it was just we were just kind of rapidly growing, and we felt like we couldn't be, didn't want to focus on physical stores at that time, and then. We ended up buying another building which is our building in Byers Street, because our office and warehouse space, which was in Bowen Hills, had just kind of like exploded. We had like people everywhere and nowhere to put anyone else. And so we were like, we need to split it up, and we really didn't want to like have our warehouse out in like the boondocks. We wanted like our warehouse to be in a cool spot still. Yeah. So we bought this building where our office currently is now in Byers Street, which is like about, I think, 800 square meters, which was heaps of space in comparison.
Yep.
And we did a bit of a renovation on that building for it to be like our warehouse.
That was going to be our warehouse, and then Brook Street was going to be our office.
And by the time we had renovated it, which was like a year, we had already knew that we had outgrown it. So we were like, okay, now we've got two buildings that we own and we can't use that one and we can't use that one. So we ended up moving our office into the building that was for our warehouse, which is in Byers Street now. And we were like, we have no choice but to move further out.
Yeah, we moved out to Zilmia for our DC, which was a few thousand square meters, and it was like actually what we needed. And then...
And you're buying the buildings each time. You're not renting them out.
Zilmia we rent.
Right.
But the inner city ones we buy, which has been good. But we basically like, I'm like, this is going to be like a 2-hour long question if I get into every single detail. But
do you think also like by being here where your office is, because you're seeing young people walking around all the time, you're living part of culture, it's urban culture, do you think that helps with design?
I think it does. Like, I
feel like the most reason why we like to be in a city is just for like convenience for our staff, because I feel like people are happier when they're in a good atmosphere, and we always want to create that. So it
was literally like we couldn't find a space in a city big enough for our DC. That was like impossible. So we were like, okay, we have to go out a little bit, and it's only a half an hour drive, but we were like, we have to go out. But we were like, at least if we can keep our office, we sort of did a vote with our staff at the time. We're like, okay, do you guys prefer for us to get a building maybe half an hour or 40 minutes away? You can all park, but you've got to drive to get there. Or do you prefer us to be in a city, a bit harder to park, but most people live around there, like
cafes,
5-10
restaurants,
minutes away. And everyone was like, no,
easy.
in a city. And we were like, okay, cool. Same.
Suits us.
So that's what we did. And then basically gradually we started doing a little bit more of our own brand. We still carried other brands. We kind of, but then we it was probably maybe 3 years ago now, probably 3.5 years ago, we got to a point where we were kind of like, we were selling. We only had, I think, 30% of our own brand, but 70% of what we were selling was
Our own brand.
but we only stocked 30% in our
for a number of items.
Yeah. So it was like everyone wanted our own brand. That's the stuff that we were designing it, especially Nat and a couple of the staff. We didn't even have a proper design team at that point. That was maybe 4 years ago or something.
During COVID, around that time?
Just before COVID.
Okay.
Or no, just after COVID. It was like sort of just in the middle, just towards the end of COVID. And we were kind of like.
And was it now already called Verge Girl at this point?
We just kind of made the decision that we were going to change it over to VRG GRL.
Okay. And by the way, where does Verge Girl come from? What's the origins?
Oh, well, it's a long story. The store that we took over was called Verge originally. So
in Elizabeth Arcade.
Yeah. So because we changed it, we decided to keep it. I don't know. We just kept it as Verge.
Weird.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's literally no cool
relevance
story behind it.
That's a cool story.
Yeah.
You inherited some history.
Yeah. And then we decided we're going to just pivot our brand after COVID. We'd kind of during COVID made the decision, and we were umming and ahhing, and it was like a big decision to pivot our brand to just do a completely design-led business, just change it, rebrand. And so just after COVID, which was, 3-4 years ago.
Grew tons through COVID as like lots of online businesses.
Were you having a lot of problems getting stock at that time and supply chains, or was it?
It was okay. We were wherever we could, we were buying as much as we could.
Yep.
So
we would air freight like
whatever we could.
And we had like a really amazing like girl who was like in charge of our logistics. So that wasn't too difficult, although we were just paying a lot for.
Oh yeah, we were paying like an extra I don't know. Oh, it was like a fortune.
Yeah.
I can't even think
but
about.
We would rather pay for it and have it than
not and not have the stock to sell.
And why change the name?
Just after COVID, we decided to pivot our business and we hired a full design team. We had garment techs, production manager, design manager. We had a few designers, assistant design. And Nat kind of, I guess, was in charge of all that. And we were like, okay, we made the decision that we were going to phase out all the other brands, which some stuff we had orders for that were arriving months later. So we gradually had to stop ordering, gradually get stuff in until we phased it out. And in the meantime, we had to basically design 100% of our own product.
That was like probably, I feel like, the most challenging time for us because we had to find hire a whole lot more people and sort of,
and configure how it was going to work.
And did it change your culture much?
I think it did because at that time, we had to make certain buyers redundant and we had to, because we were changing so much of the business, it was kind of like we wanted to work on more sustainability and wanted to, we wanted to work with more ethical factories, which when you're buying other brands, you don't know what they're doing. They can tell you whatever they're doing, but unless you're working, because even the 20 or 30% of our own brand we were making, we were working through an agent in Australia, whereas when we sort of pivoted, we started working directly with the factories in China.
And visiting them, and
we went there and visited them, and
level.
like it was so different and so new to us. And even, we had a really great team, but it was like still, it was still new.
So you're hiring in this expertise as well?
We were hiring in, but I think because at the time it was so new, we had a few people that had quite a lot of experience, but they still needed that management, So that was kind of, I guess, a time where we were really navigating where we were at.
Because it was new to us, and I think that we've always sort of been like, we want to fully understand every corner of the business before, or not the business. Of course we understand that, but really, like, when it was like new territory, we felt like we wanted to kind of tread lightly a bit and figure it out. And then we had hired like core key people that we couldn't do it without, which was like the design team and garment techs, and expanded on that.
And how did you, like, designers obviously going to bring in a new like feel?
Well, that
was that challenging as well, because you were like going here and then somebody comes in and they want to go here?
Because I have always like headed all of our design, and I was like, I physically cannot kind of like lead it on my own, but also hiring like creative people is
everyone
like
has
really
their own
hard
direction they're going, and we wanted to stay true to our brand.
So protective over like everything that we put out, that it wasn't easy to find like those.
And in Brisbane too, right? Because Brisbane's not necessarily the hub of garment districts and designers. And
it's weird because there's so many like amazing e-com businesses out of Brisbane, except like we have the smallest pool of like people, I feel.
Yeah. But it worked?
Yeah.
It worked.
It did. So we got through the bumps and the challenges, but
we've grown so much, and we've like sort of like just forced Verge Girl to grow. Like as we've grown and had higher expectations and really wanted every part of Verge Girl for us to be really proud of and not make any decisions that we, didn't feel like
personally,
that didn't align with our values. So it was a big learning curve for us, but I feel like we've like grown
in the last probably 6 to 12 months. All of that work from 3 or 4 years ago has just started coming into fruition. So it's kind of like, it's been really rewarding, especially in the last sort of 12 months, to see all of that work that we put in. And it was like the hard yards, because when you've been in business for, 13, 14 years and then 15 years, and then you're, completely pivoting your strategy of basically your whole business. It was like we almost had to take 2 steps back to take.
Did you regret at any point? Were there moments when you went, we made the right decision?
I think we had a bit of a period that was difficult, just managing new territory. But I think we just all kept, we have a good support system. We had really key team members that were there from before the rebrand and we're in the business during, and I feel like for all of us, it's so rewarding just to see it, to see all that work come out now.
Proportionally, how much is now outside Australia versus inside Australia?
It changes depending on the time of year, but it's about 50%, 50% US. Some months it goes to 60% US, and then Australia, and then there's a sort of small percentage.
And do you promote it overseas, or people just find you overseas?
Well, only really in the last 12 months we've started doing marketing in the US.
Small things, or like,
we did a few activations. We did, a couple of billboards, and we went to the US a few times and did like gifting suites with, influencers and that kind of stuff, and VIPs, friends of the brand in the US.
That has only really been in the last 12 months up until, and we've seen like growth from that. But the US.
Before the last 12 months, it was literally just organic.
Yep.
Which was so weird for us because we were like, there's such a big percentage of our sales that come, especially from the US, but we haven't even, it's just like social media. And
so how many people would make up the whole team now?
We've got about probably 70 maybe.
Right.
Yeah.
Impressive.
Probably 70.
And what do you, taking us back in these journeys, to me it feels like everybody, including my own daughter, starting their own brands.
Literally.
Because it's just on social media and it's like, I'm in fitness, I'm in, I'm going to do party dresses, whatever.
Yeah.
Is that created more competition and what advice would you say? Because I think like you started out, a lot of people didn't start out in the garment business or didn't have parents in the garment business.
I think, you go.
I was just going to say, I feel like if you find your niche, like you've got to find like a gap in the market somewhere. I think it's more difficult if you try and do something that a million other people are doing already really well because they're going to be so far ahead of the game than you. But I think like for
you've got to find your like why and who, like what your, I guess, what problem you're solving for people. Even if it's something like clothing or, something that can be somewhat superficial, there's still something that you're solving for someone. And I feel like if you find that why you want to do what you're doing or why you want to sell what you're selling.
What is the Verge Girl why?
We create clothes that we hope make people feel confident. And I think that in a world of like beigeness, we like just the little like bright star because I think that, what inspires us and what we really value is like innovation, creativity, and that is like our why. Every decision that we make, whether it be like from design to marketing to anything and everything, we always just like bring it back to, does it feel like Verge Girl? And, we're a very just sort of collaborative community of people. And I think that,
we want people to feel good in what they're wearing. The other thing is we donate a percentage of our profit to charity. And that's like a big thing for us as well. The more successful we get, the more we can give. And so for us, that's sort of like, I guess, more a personal thing for us that we've brought into our business from when we started.
When I think we grew up with like our parents always like have, sponsored children and would, bring like children in and pay for
life-saving operations and different things like that
through their business, and we would always like be there crying with our mum when we would hear stories, and I feel like it's just part of who we are. So I think even though like now I'm still so inspired by everything that is like our world, our Verge Girl world around us, really the core of why we continue and why we so like passionate about what we do is so that we can make a difference. And that's like just one of our values. Like it's so important to us to do as much as we can, even though it sometimes feels like a drop in an ocean. I feel like it keeps us
matters, yeah. And do you have one charity or do you have a lot of charities that are in a certain theme?
We donate, I guess, just
a lot of charities.
Yeah, a lot of charities. Wherever we see a need.
Right.
We try, like we're doing for International Women's Day, we're partnering with a domestic violence charity. I think it's mostly female, but they cater to men and women. But we are filling up a truck with they set up houses for people, homeless people that are fleeing from domestic violence situations, and we're filling up a truck.
And we get our whole team involved. So like the whole DC team and office team, like we're packing like
big bags full of gift bags full of all different products. We're doing like huge orders basically to help this charity, Friends with Dignity, fill houses for people.
Congratulations.
And we're like,
so it's sort of like dependent on, I mean, there is a handful of like Compassion and Mercy Ships. Like there's a handful that we just, always donate to, but it's sort of like, if it's like.
Amazing.
Depending on the time,
yeah.
We did St. Vincent's Homeless Appeal. We did like a massive donation so they could put, I don't know how many, it was a certain amount of homeless people in a hotel for a night.
Yeah.
We did that a few months back. So it's kind of just like at the time, whatever we feel is something.
Very
There's
rewarding.
always something
that's needing. Yeah.
And is there in your head, like I'm always trying to think of designers, and being in retail myself for most of my life, do you actually picture certain people as your customers? Do you visualize them? Is that how?
Yeah.
Do you see what a Verge Girl is or a community, or how does it work?
I think, our customer has always, or our Verge Girl has always been a mixture of Nat and I. We're completely different style, quite different personality and people. And I think we've always just imagined our customer to be a mixture of the two of us.
But not like I have a picture of who, like what a Verge Girl might like be like, but it's not like a visual, like
it's more like
it's just kind of like, I don't know, more of maybe it's just in my head. I mean, we do have like customer personas based on real customers, but when we're like designing and creating, we do have, I don't know, I feel like it's just someone who like appreciates color and creativity and not
dresses for their mood and and also,
doesn't quite follow the crowd.
And as we've grown up, our customer has grown up, and we do customer surveys and things like that, and we can clearly see that our customer, as we've grown, which obviously our business has grown as we've grown, but we started as like quite young women, so as we've grown, our customers have grown with us. So and it's funny because sometimes, we see customers or we speak to customers that are like, oh my God, I remember I used to come to the store and shop and you guys used to serve me like 15 years ago. And we're like, it's so funny. But I think our customer is somewhere between us, but it's kind of, it has grown as we've grown.
And I mean, my naivety, but is it fast fashion? In other words, are you just constantly designing, constantly pushing out, or is there proper seasons?
No, well, I think since we pivoted our brand, because it's so design led, all of our stock is designed like we're basically, our design team is designing now for December.
November, December, yeah.
Yeah, so we're like, so it's definitely not fast fashion. It's more, I think because it is so design led, we do them in seasons, in like 3 monthly seasons. But we design because since we sort of pivoted our brand, we've really extended our timeline, our design timeline, just from a sustainability point of view.
Every single piece is like fit multiple times.
It's
and
really
fabric
thoughtfully
is
designed,
perfected, and things are like tried and tested and washed, and we don't put anything like out that we're not really proud of, and so it literally takes time. Yeah. So
and what happens if you run out of a season? Like you just nailed it so quickly, and if you've got that big a pipeline?
Well,
does that ever happen?
No. Well, things do, like, supply and demand, I feel like is an ongoing,
something
struggle sometimes. Yeah, something that we navigate. We have an amazing merch team, but there is stuff that comes in and sells out in a day.
Like I think because we're like so like for a fashion brand, we're quite innovative, and you just physically cannot foresee the things that will kind of go viral. And we've had, so many pieces that will just randomly sell out. We'll sell hundreds in like a couple of hours and they're gone, and then we can't get enough back quick enough, and whatever we were able to get, walks out again. And like that's sort of like just something that we always, I feel like, I don't know how you can perfect that. I don't know if you physically can. But.
Yeah. And will you just keep expanding, like will it from clothing into all sorts of jewelry and
No, I think we're gonna stick to clothing.
I think I would really love to, you know, in the future do like maybe like a small amount of bags and shoes because I love bags and shoes, but I would only want to do it if they were like perfect. Like, it's
that's a process.
So pivot a little bit. Does AI play any part yet in the business? Has that started to encroach on your business? Are you using it in any way?
I think our team uses it a bit. Yeah.
They use it a lot for like, it really simplifies so many things that takes like, you know, human power.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't use AI. I'm sorry. I just don't.
I need
but I like feel like I still so much value like, you know, things in my hands and like real magazines. And
it's so funny. Some of our team just like don't have any pens on their desk. They don't use any notepads. It's like all digital. And I probably, because we're so old school, I need notepads. I need pens.
My husband who's co-CEO with Dan, but like he like literally uses AI for everything. I'm like, okay, just hold up. Can we just talk?
And what about marketing? Like you were just mentioning the way you've launched into the US and so on. That's some pretty modern and.
I think that we're trying to like bring what we have been, you know, working on with the team is how can we bring like people together to inspire one another. And it's kind of like how I feel like people are moving back into wanting to like shop in like, you know, physical retail stores. I think that people who
they want like experiences from a brand, even though you're an e-com brand, they want experiences.
People want to like
physical
touch the clothes and see it on people. And I feel like even, you know, moving away from like, you know, influencers on social media and actually seeing like people wearing product and being able to like, you know, sit with people and, you know, eat together and, you know, have a brand like Verge Girl put on an amazing thing where you can, you know, really communicate with other people, like-minded
in an authentic
people,
way,
is something that we've
got. I think for the next 12 months we have a lot of, I think physical activations, and that's, although obviously, you know, paid ads and all of that is really important. That's not really like our expertise, but we have an amazing team that does that. But as much as that's super important, we feel like the brand part of your business and the digital and paid part of your business really have to intertwine and really have to work together so that people can actually experience marketing, but not in a typical marketing way. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it's experiential, like you're saying.
So there's like, I feel like it's like activations and experiences that we have planned for the next 12 months that are going to be more important, I feel like, for marketing your brand than anything else.
And where does it go to from here? How big does it get? Do you even have a dream of handing it over at some stage, or how does? I know you're both young, but
not anytime soon. But
I feel like
we've just opened a physical store in Sydney.
Okay.
So I think we want to open just a handful of stores just for brand purposes, for people to be able to feel the product, touch the product in Australia and then in the US, a couple in the US. But I feel like that's kind of
I think that we're still so excited and so
we feel like there's so much we want to do.
By what we do and the people around us and our community that I couldn't think of not doing.
Yeah. And is there a place in the US you're thinking about where you do your first retail store?
I think probably New York, to be honest.
Okay.
New York and LA are like our two cities that we sell a lot to and that we really like. So I think probably New York would be.
And in the business, when you come to a disagreement, who decides?
Well, we kind of, Nat, myself and Kale, and we have our GM. It's kind of the four of us that are in the conversation, the super serious conversations. And we're all really honest with each other. The four of us are like, we're all completely different people. and we have completely different opinions and views on things. But I think one thing that we pride ourselves with is that we are all really honest, and I think that's why we can all work together. That's why Nat and I can work.
A common
goal
and, kind of values for
where we want the business to go and where we're at in the business. So at the end of the day, we're all there for the same reason. But
we don't cross over much. Like during the day, like I don't really talk. I don't get to like sit down and talk to Dan about stuff. She's doing her stuff. I'm doing my stuff. Like I barely talk to my husband
during the day.
So those things occasionally come up,
and we sort of just like, I don't know how we decide. It's kind of like
occasionally I'm like, you're such a bitch. And then we turn around and then like 5 minutes later it's typical sister stuff and we're like, I need to ask you something. That's on the
pretty
rare.
But I think, it's like, I don't know, majority wins really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your culture, 4-day work week in Newstead.
Yeah.
What else can you share?
Well, we kind of did a bit of a trial with the 4-day work week. We were sort of like, Nat and Kale were advocating for that, and I was a bit like, not sure about that one. But we were like, okay, let's do a test for like 2 or 3 months and see whether the productivity goes down or, goes up and so we sort of tested it out and it was literally the same. So we decided, that was maybe over a year ago now, but we decided to change it to a 4-day work week. And so basically everyone has Fridays off. They get a long weekend. And I feel like that's really, it's a perk of the job and it's good. It's good for our culture. We really pride ourselves and work hard,
to protect our culture.
Of the company. Just, we're predominantly a female workplace. We have a few males that are in the company, but it's predominantly female. And I feel like, you have to sometimes navigate that. Having
not always.
it's not always easy having a massive group of females all working together. But I think in our workplace, we really do genuinely have a culture where everyone wants to help each other, where we've tried to foster a culture of like not only creativity but collaboration. Like we want the teams to cross over. We want you guys to have meetings with people that you wouldn't
really
usually
value like everyone's voice, like from the juniors to the management. We really like everything kind of works as a bit of an open table in our office. And I think that
is it an open floor plan?
Yeah, well, we've got our offices and then we have a meeting room and basically the majority of the rest is open. We have a studio, but we have a massive long table and we have everyone sitting on the high desks, which I think is good. Sometimes not so good when you're trying to concentrate, but I think it is most of the time good because everyone's working, sitting next to each other. Yeah.
Separate.
And long service, like people are staying around for a long time.
Yeah, we've got like our first employee, Jessie, is still with us. She's our brand manager and she's been there like 9 years or something, 8 or 9 years. And so we do have a few key team members that have been there for years and I feel like then most of them now are in management positions. But I feel like the longer, you're with the business, the more you understand the way it works. And we really try to promote from within as well in our culture and in our team. If we can promote someone, if we can see that potential, and they're taking that initiative to grow, we really want to push that along and help them grow. We want people to be in our business and actually love their jobs. I don't want anyone to come to work and like dread to come to work. That's like my nightmare. I want people to come and actually love what they're doing and love the space and the atmosphere of the office and DC. So our ops manager who works with the management in the DC has created an amazing culture there. Like, it's really good.
But I feel like for us, always like hiring people on like their skill but equally important for us is like, you know, their values and like who they are as people and whether they're going to bring, you know, add value to our culture or not. And so we really we do pride ourselves on having a really good, you know, environment for people to work in. Yeah.
Congratulations. And what advice would you give a young entrepreneur that's starting?
Firstly, find something that you're really passionate about, because I feel like if you don't really, really like love what you're doing, you won't have longevity in it.
And you won't be able to navigate the hard times because business is not always easy. Every entrepreneur, every business owner can tell you that. Every founder can tell you that. So if you're not super passionate, that passion will kind of help you push through, you know, the hard times or the challenging times in business.
Usually can outweigh it, the bad stuff. But I also think taking risks is like really important, because I think that often like it's really scary to like think, you know, if I do this, this could happen. But I think without taking risks, you really don't know how much potential you have in front of you. So I think,
and you can't really grow without taking risks. Like you just can't.
So even though some things like seem really scary and far out, I feel like, you know, again, it comes back to like if you really believe in what you do, you can sort of like step out a bit further. That's how I feel like we've grown Verge Girl to where it is today. Yeah, they would be my two things.
Well, congratulations.
Thank
I mean, it sounds like a
you.
great place to work.
Thank
It
you.
sounds like you're having a lot of fun. It sounds like you're living
High.
the best selves. So, yeah, I think as another entrepreneur, it's quite envious that you've been able to do what you're doing. So, it seems like it's just going to get bigger and bigger from here.
Thank you. Hope so.
Well done.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks so much.